Okay, we just talked about multiplying two rational numbers. Well, what if we're multiplying more than two rational numbers? So we have this, negative 2/3 times negative half times negative 3/5. So the first step is to find the product of the first two factors. Both factors are negative, so their product will be positive. So let's look at this. I have a negative times a negative, so I know my answer is going to be positive. And I have 2 times 1, which makes 2. And 3 times 2, which makes 6. And I can simplify that by dividing both by 2. And that's going to equal 1/3. So the product of the first two numbers is 1/3. Now I need to multiply this times the third number, which is negative 3/5. And I know now I'm multiplying a positive times a negative, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And 1 times 3 is 3. And 3 times 5 is 15. I can simplify that by dividing by 3. That's going to be negative 1/5 for my answer. Okay, here's just a little trick if you want to use it. Whenever you have an even number of negative signs, the answer is always positive. When you have an odd number of negative signs, the answer is always negative, right? If I have two negative numbers, negative times a negative is a positive, that's 2, that's positive. If I have 4 negatives, a negative times negative times negative times negative, those two cancel out and make a positive. These two cancel out and make a positive, so that would equal a positive. So that way, if you have 16 numbers that you're multiplying and you have 4 negative signs in there, you know your answer is going to be positive. Same thing for this. If you have an odd number of negative signs, say I multiplied negative times a negative times a negative, well, I know 2 of those negatives makes a positive, and then I would be left with a positive times a negative, which is going to be a negative. So for instance, if you had 13 negative signs in a problem, you would know that your answer was always going to be negative so that you didn't lose sight of it and make a mistake in your answer. Okay, I want you to go ahead and press pause in the video now and try number 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Press pause. All right, let's try first number 4. I'm going to look at the first two numbers and do negative 3/4 times negative 4/7. First thing, I have a negative times a negative, so I know my answer is going to be positive, and I multiply. 4 times 3 is 12. 7 times 4 is 28. I'm going to go ahead and simplify those so I don't have to multiply such large numbers, and I'm going to divide by 4. Divide by 4, I get 3/7. Now I can take 3/7 and multiply it by negative 2/3. And since I have a positive times a negative, my answer is going to be negative. 3 times 2 is 6. 7 times 3 is 21. I can simplify that by dividing by 3. And I end up with negative 2/7 is my answer. Hopefully you got that right. If not, check and see where you made your mistake along the way. Okay, number 5. I'm going to multiply negative 2/3 times negative 3/4. Again, I multiply straight across. Negative 2 times negative 3. A negative times a negative makes a positive. 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to go ahead and simplify that. Divide both by 6, so I get 1/2. Then I'm going to take 1/2 and I'm going to multiply it by the remaining 4/5. And I have a positive times a positive, so I know my answer will be positive. And I have 4 times 10, which I can simplify by reducing by 2. And I end up with 2/5 is my answer. All right, the very last one. I have 2/3 times negative 9/10 and a positive 5/6. Okay, I know that a positive times a negative, 2/3 times negative 9/10 is going to give me a negative answer. But I'm going to show you a little trick when you are multiplying, and you can also use this for dividing fractions. When you have a number, we've talked about this before, if it's in the opposite, so if the numerator and the denominator can be simplified prior to multiplying, you can do that. You'll hear me say simplify before you multiply. It makes the problem easier. Well, I can divide 2 by 2 and get 1, and I can also divide 10 by 2 and get 5. I can also divide 3 by 3 and get 1, and I can divide 9 by 3 and get 3. So now I have 1 times 3, which is 3, and 1 times 5, which is 5. You don't have to do it that way. You could do 18 over 30 and simplify it all the way down, and you would still get negative 3/5. It's just a little trick if you want to use it. So you have negative 3/5 times 5/6, and you have a negative times a positive, so you know your answer is going to be negative. And again, I can simplify before I multiply. 5 divided by 5, they both go into each other once. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And I get an answer of negative 1/2. If that's too complicated for you, you don't have to use it. You can do it the long way. But for those of you that like that method, you feel free to use it. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.